Well, alright. Next best thought on Corona, after just contemplating what's going on a little more. What isn't being seen? What isn't being understood? That at least I'm directly being told. Um, Sort of what has continued to be the principal problem here, in my opinion, that naturally we are sucking all the necessary resources to combat Corona out of the globe, first and foremost, similar to how we brain drain the world because everyone wants to come here for an education. And we tempt them to stay if they're exceptional, not just, uh, really smart, but exceptionally smart. Um, and that's where the whole term, the brain drain, comes from. In this case, we're resource draining out of survivalist tactics. Survivalist tactics, emotions, aren't necessarily based upon panic. They're based upon, I don't know, a certain time unto which we just give into our gut, our eye statistics, our core of what derationalized certain civilized behavior. In the modern day, I think this is best exemplified by the shedding of prejudice. Prejudice, racism, all these things are kind of integrated into our reality as survival tactics, as to contexts where and how we are and aren't accepted, and thus then therefore threatened by. Um, the natural racial divide between white and black is the most common state in which America experiences this in the modern, to some degree, even though it's a little bit more about foreigners, I guess now. Anyways, as though it hasn't ever been, but anyways, um, if we are sucking all these resources out and finding out all these cases exist in America and only becoming more compelled into our survivalist nature to cutthroat deals to get these tests, to get these masks, to get these ventilators, to get what we need, and be the first ones to present we're obviously the most in need. Are we? This overlap from China to Europe to us. And if you look at, travel and things of this nature, it makes sense to some degree. Um, that's why I'm predicting, or not predicting, but I'm pointing out how obvious it is that if New York's a pandemic of pandemics in small geographical terms over the globe, and clearly Washington, for the same variables of high travel, I guess probably our second biggest tourist location, obviously next to New York. I've never read any statistic about that. I just know New York's the number one, and if that's the case, our capital is probably number two, for local, national, and international, based on business and based on tourism. Um, and I know there's a lot of interactions between, in my state, Maryland, Annapolis, and everything in between Baltimore and DC, traveling to DC on a regular basis for work, necessitative cause of what then therefore will be the next big spread. Uh, I'm not saying it's not going to travel into Virginia plenty as well, but the next major real place in Virginia is far away from DC. For Maryland, there's two major epicenters which could break out that have people that live there that treat DC as their, home base for employment or other professional purposes. Uh, Therefore, I see a huge thing about to take place between DC, Annapolis, and Baltimore, and the surrounding regions to some degree. But that highway between 50 going out east and 95 going up north, fortunately, it happens to make a big check mark, but it's clearly going to hit there the hardest. It took a while to find out where the worst would be, and that was New York, from what we know now, but it's about to be the area I grew up in. Um, and that's also based on the fact that bigwigs between DC and New York are constantly traveling between each other. Now, New York's been supposedly cut off, but it's a 3 hour ride. I mean, there's plenty of country boys who are used to riding into the city and dealing with a 3 hour drive like it's nothing just to go party for one night in the big city, some of these larger states. And if you think about that, I mean, that's the mentality to some degree of this circumstance. I'm not saying it's going to be the party, but there's going to be a lot of necessitative professional purposes for a breaking of any quarantine, which could induce a couple cases, which could create plenty more cases between these people's needs to go to the grocery store. I don't know what to think about that, but again, back to the resource drain. If it's our necessity to create the variables into which we get the most tests, we get the most stuff, we make the biggest representation, we also blunder taking this seriously in relation to our interconnection with the world, thus then therefore spreading the virus here exponentially, and our interstate travel. I mean, this is clearly quadruple, at least, the problem we have statistically been able to validate it as right here, right now, at the least, in my opinion. I mean, thinking about all the other variables of untested cases, of people who are going to just, quarantine without a test because they basically know it without a test. You know, when you have it, it's epically well known that when people have STDs, they don't get tested. I've always been extremely responsible, as best I can, even in homelessness. It's actually been not as difficult because I have to go to the hospital to get my mental health stuff, and I usually try to get an STD test done, even though it creeps me out because everyone's passing around rumors, and these people just like in America who get scared of people with masks because maybe that means they're trying not to spread the fact they have it, or they're being ridiculous and over worried, or they're not wearing a mask, and that's scary because maybe they could spread it to me because I should stay 6 feet away from them. They think all three of these variables at once, and they don't react appropriately except having underlying fear and optimism simultaneously based upon defending their own predisposition to identify the problem itself. There's a lot of humiliated conservatives who followed suit with Republicans kind of blowing this off in relation to the economy and or trying to ignore having anything to agree with the Democrats based on the emotional divide and their leverage to try to use this as a political method and scheme to kind of help them in the next election because of how desperate they are to flip-flop the White House, which really might very well not happen now that they've chosen Biden. I mean, Trump got in on Obamacare and a wall, but it was really Obamacare. And if you're going to bring back Obamacare instead of say, hey, we still want everyone taken care of, and there was an option on the table from Bernie Sanders to do more and save more, even though it goes against a lot of what we first then therefore believed was or wasn't a necessity in relation to our ideological principle to elevate uh, the product quality, essentially. But, you can't come out with a better way to fix the cold. You can't come out with a better way or a better drug to fix bronchitis. You can't come out with a better sense or better circumstance other than creating at home solutions through modern technology, health bots, pill delivery with drones, and things of this nature. And that could really only be done or taken on in a extremely inexpensive, immediate manner through sort of a decision to go full in on a Defense Act like policy towards medical interests, which Bernie Sanders could have delivered and been able to rationalize so exceptionally well in this pandemic and actually engage people without having them poo poo on how obvious this is necessary for everyone's health and livelihood. People who usually ignore it just so they don't have to feel stupid for having poo pooed it for half their life. And it's really sad. But all these numbers I see, I times them by 4 everywhere. Because even though it's not that simple, overall, it probably is. You know what I mean? Like it might be times 7 here, times 2 there, times 1 there, times 6 there. But all in all, if you times 4 all these numbers, those are the real numbers right now, globally, combined, most likely, in my opinion. And nobody will ever validate that because it's not going to help anyone until we can actually validate it and move forward based on real evidence. But it's sort of obvious if you think about it, at the least. But I don't know. Tests come into validating this, which is a product on the free market, being profited for, whether or not it's being backed by big government loans to make ready and free, if not extremely inexpensive, to the everyday man, covered by their personal or not covered by their personal insurance. And any place which isn't getting the message to, you know, do the right thing with this, you never know. But the bizarre thing is this could easily just come back like it did in China. Therefore, bizarrely enough, it's argumentable that all the people who are ballsy enough and want to play the risks hard enough might as well just catch it and make themselves immune. I know that sounds insane, but is it? I don't know. That's why I think we're about to move into a phase system, unto which essentially allows people to sort of undercover indoctrinate that very philosophy in this, in relation to their necessity to continue doing their day to day thing to take care of themselves, the people around them, as contradictory as it might be in certain circumstances, under certain unfortunate variables. And the paycheck to paycheck majority of this country is not going to back out. If you're over 65, maybe they will. Maybe they won't. Maybe they're not happy with their lives and they say, screw it, like a smoker reading cancer facts. But if you think about the nature into which irresponsible STD spread has basically been done through for people who know they have things but refuse to test for them, which I've seen an exceptionally high amount of in my country. People who just don't want to ever get tested until it's clearly obvious if they don't want to go to the doctor and get something to kill some sort of infection or problem they have, it's over. It's really sad. I know I'm the asshole from Jurassic Park telling a benevolent, happy old man who wants to make children see live dinosaurs, you're a fucking idiot. You're a total and complete fucking idiot. And you hired me just to make sure, in case I figured this out, you have to know this. The old man's like, why did I ever hire you? You suck. This is gonna work. And 3 or 4 movies later, it just keeps getting worse. It's too bad he got eaten in the first movie. Oh well.